Three defendants in the Mongkok riot trial to be sentenced in 3 weeks from today. Three bus unions launch a work to rule this Friday morning.
Hello, good evening. Three defendants in the Mongkok riot trial, including localist Edward Leung, will be sentenced on June 11th. This after the trio made their pleas in mitigation at the High Court today. Sharon Tang reports.
Edward Leung's parents left the High Court without saying a word. Leung's father was one of the 11 people who wrote mitigation letters on behalf of the 26-year-old. Others include former lawmaker Margaret Ng, Cardinal Joseph Zen, and a member of the House of Lords in the UK, Lord Alton of Liverpool. Many of them said Leung is a committed person. The localist's lawyer described him as an educated young man who is willing to take responsibility, such as by pleading guilty to the charge of assaulting a police officer. The defense counsel said adults of his age were the ones who shirked their responsibilities, adding that they had taken democracy for granted and that prompted young people to voice out. The judge questioned if that provided grounds to rationalize Leung's violent acts, and the defense counsel disagreed. As for another defendant, Low Kin Man, his lawyer spoke highly of his client's intention to protect the city, such as by shouting "Take care of Hong Kong" last week when he heard his guilty verdict. The lawyer also urged the judge to take into consideration the political atmosphere at the time of the Mongkok unrest, but the judge stressed the court would only focus on dealing with criminal offences. Wong Kah-keui, who earlier pleaded guilty to a charge of rioting, was described by his lawyer as only being impulsive when he attacked the police. The case has now been adjourned until June 11th. That's when sentences will be handed down. During the trial, the jury could not reach a majority verdict on some other riot-related charges against Leung and Low, as well as two other defendants. The Department of Justice will decide 3 weeks from today whether to seek a retrial in relation to those charges. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Three bus unions will launch a work to rule action this Friday morning. That's in protest against the government's failure to effectively reduce the maximum number of working hours for bus drivers in a revised set of guidelines. As Caleb Long reports, the unions expect up to 4,000 drivers to join the industrial action.
If you take the bus to work, remember to set aside more time for the trip this Friday morning. That's because three bus unions will launch a work to rule action that day. Participating drivers will strictly follow the rules by loading and offloading passengers at designated areas. They will also refuse to overload their buses, nor letting oversized luggage on board. The industrial action will conclude by 10 a.m. The work to rule was prompted by the government's failure to effectively reduce the maximum number of working hours for bus drivers in a revised set of guidelines. The original maximum duty hours was set at 14. Under the Transport Department's revised guidelines, the number of working hours for normal shifts was reduced from 14 to 12. But one new guideline was added, where drivers on special shifts can still work up to 14 hours a day with at least a 3-hour break in between. Bus companies also reserve the right not to pay drivers for their break time. The three unions, all under the Confederation of Trade Unions, earlier urged the government to reduce the duty hours of special shifts from 14 to 13, but without success. They now want the 3-hour break to be counted as wage-earning hours. The unions say they expect up to 4,000 drivers to participate in the work to rule, and they have warned of further actions if the government and bus companies fail to respond positively. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
High temperatures are expected to linger in the coming days. This as the mercury hit 34.7 degrees today, the highest so far this year. With more sunshine ahead, those on Cheung Chau preparing for tomorrow's annual Bund Festival said they'll take extra precaution. The observatory has recorded high temperatures of at least 33 degrees Celsius each day over the last 5 days. Under the influence of an anticyclone aloft, the very hot weather is expected to persist this week.
Newly elected Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad says his country is saddled with debt and blamed the previous government led by former leader Najib Razak, who is now under investigation. Malaysia has set up a special task force that will look into possible criminal conduct of individuals involved in the management of state fund One Malaysia Development Berhad, or 1MDB. This comes as Najib sought police protection over concerns about his family's safety. Najib's long-ruling coalition suffered a shock defeat in May 9th elections amid anger over at least $4.5 billion that investigators say was looted and laundered by Najib's associates from the 1MDB fund that he set up. China launched a relay satellite today as part of a groundbreaking program to land a probe on the far side of the moon later this year. The China National Space Administration said on its website the satellite, named Queqiao, was launched at 5:28 a.m. from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center in Sichuan Province. The satellite was lifted into space aboard a Long March 4C rocket. It will facilitate communication between controllers on Earth and the Chang'e 4 mission. China hopes to become the first country to soft land a probe on the moon's far side, also known as the dark side, because it faces away from Earth and is relatively unknown.
And still ahead tonight. A plan to recruit close to 7,000 more civil servants in the current fiscal year. 2 trees on Bonham Road chopped down after 13 hours of work. And in London, Meghan Markle's wedding bouquet placed on the tomb of an unknown warrior.
肌膚需要水分，缺水嘅肌膚容易造成衰老、細紋等各種問題。Dr. Joe 面膜挑選6種嚟自日本頂級玻尿酸，每款顏色代表唔同功效，按照肌膚嘅需要，揾出適合自己嘅面膜。6種玻尿酸32g 美容液，榮獲 Mon Selection 國際品質評鑑銀賞，鎖緊水分，留住水潤。Dr. Joe。維他。
Welcome back to TVB News. Authorities are looking to hire close to 7,000 more civil servants by March next year. That marks the largest number of recruits since the handover. This comes amid an aging government workforce, with the number of retirees expected to go up further. You might have heard government jobs described as an iron rice bowl for its benefits and job security, yet not everyone intends to stay in the civil service. While the resignation rate has remained low at around 0.55%, the number of retirees is growing. The government expects around 6,800 civil servants to retire each year from now until 2023-24. That would be around 4% of the workforce.
And now you cannot have a seamless transaction. So when people retire, you just ask his colleague to do his job, while taking up more work for 1 or 2 weeks. It should be okay, but what if it lasts more months?
Authorities now want to recruit 6,700 new staff in the coming year.
This year, we have increased the most number of civil service posts since the handover. We will have an increase of 3.7%.
If approved, that would boost the civil service establishment to over 188,400. Legislators at today's meeting of the LegCo panel on public service want government officials to present more promotion opportunities, as government figures show that it takes around 15 years for an officer to be promoted to a rank in the middle salary group.
In many departments, I see that the officers as successors are also in their 50s, reaching directorate grade, and this is a concern. The management should fast-track those in their 30s or 40s with potential so that they can be promoted earlier.
From mid-2015, new recruits of civilian grades are now subject to a retirement age of 65 and 60 for disciplined services grades.
Government workers have finished cutting down 2 trees in mid-levels after 13 hours of work. The government insisted it had to take them down, but critics say it was completely unnecessary. Kenneth Chu reports.
Bottom Road reopened this morning at 6 after 2 trees attached to a stone wall were cut down last night. However, as the structure of the stone wall had become unstable after the removal of the trees, nearby sidewalks were still closed to pedestrians. Officials stressed the removal was necessary as the trees were decaying and displayed poor signs of health. But experts disagreed. Professor Chu Si-wai of Chinese University's Department of Biology says the claims are unfounded. She noted that if the trees were actually in poor health or were decaying, they should be hollow or the wood quality should be problematic. She even said the trees died for nothing. The trees are estimated to be 70 to 80 years old. This woman, who has lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, says she will definitely miss the trees. She will get a picture with the trees to remember them. This man, who has been working in the area for years, supports their removal. The trees belong to everyone and we all feel for them, he said. However, to be safe, it is better if we axed them. Conservationists strongly opposed the operation, which resulted in a standoff with government officials both yesterday and today. Kenneth Chu, TVB News.
Well, remember the times when you've been told to play less and study more? Well, there's a way to perhaps combine both. In light of the rapidly growing gaming industry, a local tertiary institution will soon receive applications for its new program in esports. Cyberport CEO Peter Yan painted a bright future for the esports industry. He said globally the industry made $660 million last year, and that figure could increase by a further 40% this year. And that's why he has worked with HKU Space to launch a diploma program in esports science. Students will receive theoretical and practical training during the 6 to 9 month program. Meghan Markle's wedding bouquet was laid on the grave of the unknown warrior in London's Westminster Abbey yesterday, in keeping with royal tradition. Meghan carried the bouquet down the aisle at St George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, where she married Britain's Prince Harry on Saturday. Queen Elizabeth's mother, known as the Queen Mother, started the tradition in 1923, laying her wedding bouquet in memory of her brother Fergus, who was killed during World War I. And that's the news.
Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.